Hey beautiful people, on today's episode of So Quaint, I'm going to be showing you how to sew this hair bonnet. You're going to be needing a pattern, an interior fabric, preferably something that is silky or slippery so that your hair can be protected. I am using cotton for the exterior of mine, but if you want to, you can use this same fabric on the inside and the outside. I don't remember what fabric this is because I got it out of a box, but it does have a very silky texture to it. You'll need a tape measure. You will need 1/2 inch elastic or 1 inch elastic. And this right here is the same circumference as the area where I'd put my bonnet. So I actually measured this around my head. I put it at the back of the head where the bonnet would sit, and then I brought it around to the front like this. So this is how you would measure the elastic for your bonnet. And it doesn't matter if you have white or black as long as you have elastic. Today I'm going to be using my Hercules cordless electric fabric cutting machine in order to cut my fabric, but if all you have are scissors, then that works just fine. You'll also need some pins, and I have mine here on a magnetic wristband, and this just keeps all of my pins in place and I can actually keep them on my wrist, which comes in very handy. You also need a sewing machine. I'm using the Singer 4423 heavy duty sewing machine, and I have a link in my description where you can get this, and if you use my code Gabby10 you can get 10% off. I went ahead and drafted a pattern for my hair bonnet. Once you draft your pattern piece, you'll be able to make this bonnet over and over again. I measured from the right angle of a piece of paper out from the corner 13 inches each time, and I did that going all the way around, and then I was able to connect all the marks to create a quarter of the circle. You'd fold it once, fold it again, and from that corner is where you do the same steps that I just described, and you're going to draw a circle or an arc. When you unfold it, you would end up with a pattern piece just like this. So I made this bonnet earlier, but it was very small. This is actually more appropriate for a kid's hair bonnet, but I like my bonnet big, so that's why I drafted this much bigger one. If you want to know the measurements of this so that you could possibly make it for your child, this is 8.5 inches from the corner. So let's get into the cutting of our bonnet. I have a piece of African print fabric right here, and I think this is more than a 1/2 yard. This is probably about 3/4. I recommend having at least 1 yard, because if you have a yard and you make a mistake, you can always fix it, even though you probably need more than a yard to do that. But I am only using about 3/4 of a yard of African fabric here, 3/4 of a yard of black silk fabric here. So I have my fabric folded twice. So it's like this, and this is just 1 layer. So I'm folding it like this in order to create 2 layers. And then I'm going to fold it another time to create 4 layers. So my fabric is folded twice, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of fabric. So I'll just take my pattern, and I'm going to put the corner of the pattern with the corner of the fabric. If you have pattern weights, you can put them on your pattern, but if you don't, then you can add pins to your pattern. And this is just going to hold it in place while you cut. So you're going to cut around the edges of your pattern. So that's the exterior of the bonnet complete, and I want to show you guys what this looks like when it is cut. Bam! 1 big circle. Let's repeat the same steps on our interior fabric. So you see how shiny this is? I don't even know if it's silk or satin or what, but I just know that it has a beautiful texture. So I folded it once, and I'm going to fold it again. I would probably be better off pressing my fabric, because when you're cutting, you don't want to cut any more or less than you need. And cutting with crushed fabric can definitely make that much more likely. I'm going to use my African fabric piece in order to cut this piece instead of using the pattern again, because that pattern paper is very tough. It's like cardstock paper to cut along here. This will be our interior layer, and I'm gonna give this another press because clearly it still has creases in it. And I'm going to put my other fabric down and I'm going to give it a press as well. I am pressing this on the wrong side of the fabric and not the right side. So I'm going to turn my interior fabric over to the right side and I'm going to put it right sides together with the African fabric. I'm going to put some pins around the corners of my, or should I say around the edges of my circles, and this is really just to hold it in place. So I'm going to stitch around the circle, but I'm going to leave a space, probably like about right here, and that space is going to be no more than 4 inches wide. So the purpose of that space is to be able to pull the body of the bonnet through. So because the fabric underneath is slippery, I'm gonna sew on the African fabric instead, where I have more control. So I'm essentially lining up the edge of both of my fabrics before I sew. Okay, so we're coming back around to the closing point. I'm going to backstitch right here just to reinforce that area, and I'm going to cut my thread. And I also want to make sure that this part is reinforced as well, so I'm just going to go in and just do like a backstitch right there. Boom. I'm going to use my cutting machine to just trim the edges of this. I'm now going to pull the body of the bonnet through this space right here. Bam! We're gonna give this circle a good press. You want to press your fabric so that the black part is on the wrong side. So if you notice it coming over to the right side, you can just bring it over to the wrong side. And now we get to the part that was left open. Fold these parts in. So I'll just press that flat. And the next step is to sew around here 1 inch away from the edges. If you would like to, you can use your tape measure or a ruler and just mark 1 inch going all the way around, or you could just freestyle it. I have my line drawn all the way around here, and I could have easily just measured on the sewing machine where 1 inch is, but I just feel like this is a whole lot easier. So I'm going to use this line as a guide for where I'm going to sew. So I'm going to take my safety pin, which I forgot to tell you that you're going to need, put it on the end of my elastic, and I'm going to start feeding it through this channel right here. Before I even go much further, I'm going to take this end of the elastic and I'm going to pin it to that part of the bonnet, which is pretty much where it's going to come back through. And that way I can feed this through in peace without worrying about the entire elastic going through, seeing that we have a really long distance to go. So now that I'm back to this point, I'm gonna take that pin out, pin this to this side instead, and then just take my safety pin through the opening. Bring the ends of the elastic together like this, and I'm going to stitch along here. I'm evenly distributing all the ruffles throughout the entire bonnet, but we're not done yet. You still have to stitch this area closed. Stretch it out, and then I'm gonna top stitch. You can also hand stitch this area. And that pretty much completes our bonnet. This is the inside, and this is the outside. If you want it to look even better, you can use 1-inch elastic in the channel instead of 1/2-inch elastic like I did. But isn't this just cute? This bonnet is so gorgeous. If you like this video, you will probably like this one as well. Happy sewing, and remember, sewing is a superpower.